Hello everyone, my name is Mohamed and I'm the head of customer experience at HrFlow.ai. In this video, I will take you into a guided tour of our newest marketplace edition that's called Workflows. The new Workflows feature allows you to run HR-related pipelines without worrying about servers. Whether you need to continuously run some routine tasks or have a triggered execution, both scenarios are possible with Workflows. There are two main execution modes available, catch and pull. The catch mode is a webhook-like setup that allows you to execute your code whenever a request is made to a precise endpoint. So you get control over when the execution happens, and you can also leverage the request body to provide additional data to your workflow. The pull mode is similar to a cron job, which is executed on a regular basis. In both modes, the code you submit can leverage the HrFlow SDK to seamlessly create value with your HR data and HrFlow's APIs. Okay, so without further ado, let's try all this out. For the purpose of this demo, we will be using HTTPy, a nice command line HTTP client. For those that are not familiar with this tool, it's like curl, but with a more user-friendly API. Now let's get started by creating our first catch workflow. As you can see, it's quite straightforward to create a new workflow. On this first view, we set up a few details like choosing a name and description. Another important setting is the runtime. For now, the service supports Python 3.6, but watch out as new runtimes are added to the pool. Once done, you can confirm by clicking on Create Workflow. Right away, you get your endpoint and can start making requests against it. But since we didn't write any code, it won't do much at this stage. To associate some code with this workflow, you need to navigate to the Function tab. This is probably where you will spend most of your time while designing your workflows. Amongst other things, you will find here a code editor where you can enter your workflow instructions. One important thing to keep in mind is that the workflow expects a specific signature that you must respect in order to properly execute your code. For the catch type, the platform expects a function named workflow accepting two arguments, body and settings. Before getting into the details of how to use these arguments, let's just write a dummy function that respects the signature and see what we get. In just one click, the new function is deployed and ready to be tested. To do so, let's first copy the endpoint URL from the Overview tab. Mind that the endpoint expects to receive a POST request with application JSON or multi-part form data content type. Now that we are all set, let's use HTTPy to test our new endpoint. And voila! Well, not much happened because the workflow doesn't do much, but the request is successful as stated by the state key. Most entries in the returned response are self-explanatory. But while developing, you will probably make great use of std out. It should contain all entries that were sent to standard output during execution. It's a good way to debug your code. Now let's illustrate this by adding a print statement to our workflow code. As you can see, our debug message is reported in the std_out key. Okay, so now let's make our script a bit more interesting by leveraging the function arguments. The first argument is body, which is a Python dictionary that contains the request body. Depending on the content type of your request, either application JSON or multi-part form data, the request body is properly deserialized into native Python data types. That means that you do not need to do JSON deserialization or manually parse multi-part form data. The second argument is settings, which is a Python dictionary containing data that you defined in the environment properties section. It can also be used as a way to store data that get persisted from one execution to another. Let's try to illustrate all of these use cases together. First, we will assume that the request body will have a user email field. We also add a verification code entry to the settings that we check against the code field of body. Finally, we use settings to store the last user email that was processed. Let's see what we get. Cool, the request is once again successful, but a few more fields are populated now. First, by looking at the settings key, you can confirm that the execution did happen with the expected values. You can also see that the last user email value was set, and the stdout key has the expected print statements. While the example at hand is not doing much, you can see that by using both body and settings variables, it is possible to achieve a lot of useful scenarios. One last important bit is the fact that the execution environment has been loaded for your convenience with some useful libraries to allow you to do even more with workflows. The available packages include HrFlow, Request, Selenium, Twilio, SciPy, and NumPy with their pinned versions displayed. Let's confirm this by printing the corresponding versions. So that's it for the workflows demo. Overall, we saw how to create a workflow from the marketplace, how to trigger a workflow by making a request against the provided endpoint, how to debug workflows by leveraging the returned stdout key, how to use the body and settings variables, and finally, how to use HrFlow and other useful libraries. I hope that you didn't find any trouble following this tour. If you forgot anything, you can always refer back to the workflow section of our developers documentation or contact us directly for more help.